I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Randy Smallwood, President and CEO of Wheaton Precious Metals. Thank you so much for being here. Great to see you.
Charlotte, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Really nice to be here with you at PDAC, and I just want to start off, you told me that you've been to a number of different conferences just over the past couple of weeks, so tell me about those. What are the sentiment that you're getting from those? How is it all feeling?
Well, we're busier than we've ever been. More conferences, more meetings than we've ever had. The sentiment is actually very excited about where the industry as a whole is going. Not just in the gold space, in the mining industry as a whole. The focus on critical minerals, the focus on gold in terms of a store of value and a measure of value. There's just lots of interest, and so everyone's pretty excited.
I think that's really good to hear. So let's start now by talking about Wheaton's 2022 results, which came out in February. So starting with production. So we've spoken throughout the year about what's going on with the company. You had to reduce your guidance midway through the year. We got the production results. I believe they came in toward the lower end of guidance. So there's been some challenges, but I'm getting the sense that they are in the rearview mirror. You're moving forward. What would you say?
I would reiterate that.
Yeah.
Smallwood's had its challenges, and really that's, if you point to it, that was where we had the most of our issues, was at the Smallwood mine during 2022. They've had a couple of years of challenges with preventative maintenance, but they're definitely on the track to recovery there. Not only that, but the third line is starting up. They did start moving material through that third line just before the end of the year, so we're starting to see increased production from that third line. And so really I do think we have turned a corner. 2022 will be the bottom. We're going to be seeing nothing but growth, and I think that's really, probably the best aspect of what we released back in February was not so much about what we did in 22, but where we're going. We've got such strong growth over the next while.
Okay, and so let's talk about the guidance for 2023 versus 2022. What can we expect in this coming year?
So slight growth. As I said, Smallwood is going to be ramping up. The third line's coming on stream, plus they're going to try and return line 1 and line 2 back to its historic outperformance. So we should see some good strength on that side. The other area we're going to see growth in 2023 is in Constancia. In Constancia, the Pampacancha zone is going to play a bigger role. It's got much higher grades, and so it's going to play a bigger role in terms of production overall. So we're going to kickstart with probably about 6 to 7% growth over top of 2022. Should be producing somewhere around 630,000 ounces on an adjusted gold equivalent ounces basis. And I think it's the longer term guidance, as I said, over the next 5 years. We will be climbing well up over 900,000 gold equivalent ounces in production. So all these investments that we've made in development projects over the last 2-3 years, they're going to start delivering to us over the next couple of years, and really exciting times.
Yeah, I do always find it interesting that you don't just do the 1 year ahead. You do 5 and even 10-year guidance. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how you arrive at that.
Yeah, the reason we did is because when we looked around the industry, we see that there's a lot of production holes in the industry when it comes to 10 years out. And most companies do provide 5-year guidance. Our portfolio is a very strong portfolio that's got good, strong growth. The bulk of it is over 5 years, but it stays. We don't have a hole. We don't have a production hole at the end. We've got, I say it's one of the best advantages of the streaming model is we get access to some good long life base metals assets where we get our gold and silver from. These big long life copper assets that have good long-term production profiles, and so very, very healthy reserve life that gives us good, strong production for many, many years, and that's one of the reasons we came up with 10-year guidance.
Right, and speaking about what your plans are for 2023, the last time that we spoke, you told me you had a lot of projects under review. You're hoping to bring new streams online in 2023, do those deals. Are there any updates that you can share there?
Well, I can't name names, but we are very close on several. We're exclusive on a number of different opportunities, which means we're down to final negotiations, and it's never a stream until we get a signature on paper, but we're close on several, and we are very busy on that front. Streaming is a very attractive way of financing, especially for the single asset producers, or single asset developer companies.
Right, and we did talk about, of course, your role in financing in the resource sector, and you're happy to do this, of course, that's the business model, but you told us that streaming and royalty companies can't do this on their own, right?
Very much so.
So I wanted to touch back on that and ask, what would entice other entities into the sector? Do we need a higher gold price? Do we need to see more of this M&A that we've been kind of getting in 2023?
I think the best thing is successes, and so successes like the the Sabina acquisition with Goose, going forward into construction, delivering that value back to shareholders. Artemis with the Blackwater project, them coming into play. Generation as they move Marathon forward. Adventus as they move El Domo forward. We need some successes to bring back shareholders. That's the challenge right now. Is I think the industry as a whole has seen a big shift towards index type investing, which means that we don't get the individual company support when it comes to projects out there. And you can be sure that companies that we've invested into have at least passed another test, another hurdle in terms of project quality. And but there still needs to be the shareholders need to come back into that space.
So we'll wait to see if that starts happening. Hopefully we see some of those successes that ignite that. So in addition to your role at Wheaton Precious Metals, you're also chair of the World Gold Council. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today as well. Some recent statistics have shown really massive central bank buying in the last couple of quarters.
Right.
And I think people are feeling excited about that. So I wondered if you could touch on that from a World Gold Council kind of angle.
Yeah, well, it's we have seen record purchases by central banks around the world right now, and I think some of it stems from the fact that most central banks, when they study their reserves, they want to have assets that are immune to political interference. And what we've seen over the last year is that the U.S. dollar doesn't have that immunity. It can be impacted by political interference, and we've always known that that's the case with fiat currencies, but the U.S. dollar has always had an elevated position. And I think what's happening now is the central bankers are looking at their reserves and trying to decide what kind of risk do they want to attach to it. And that U.S. dollar isn't as safe as it once was. And I think that's what we're seeing is a stronger shift over towards gold as a major component in central bank reserves to provide that stability, which is what central banks are there for, is to provide stability. There's no doubt that there's a number of other countries around the world that would love to come up with some way of competing with the U.S. dollar as the main reserve currency around the world. And I think they all recognize that one of the first steps is to build up big gold reserves to backstop whatever currency they're pushing forward, right? And so all of it comes down to the fact that gold is an integral part of stability, and you need it there. And central bankers are learning that and moving on it and acting on it all around the world. We're seeing just increased buying all the way around the world. So I think it bodes very well for gold.
Right, and the question is that buying from central banks going to continue in 2023? I've heard that maybe they were buying last year because the price was lower. We have seen an uptick so far in 2023. And of course, who's going to be buying next year as well this year? Because I've heard some people say it matters who's buying. Like, okay, Turkey was the top buyer. Maybe that's not so significant as if it was, a Western country. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I just think that the momentum, the reasons still exist. And so that's going to continue to push central banks to look for that and find ways to opportunely expand their interest in investment and expand part of the reserves into the gold space. That's not going to change.
Okay, another topic that I wanted to bring up with you is this idea of central bank digital currencies. I think that there's a lot of confusion out there, maybe misinformation about what exactly they are, how do they relate to gold, what's the connection there. So this is kind of a big topic, but briefly, can you take a look at that?
Well, digital currencies, I hate to say it, I'm trying to remember the last time I used cash for anything. I think society has almost embraced the whole concept of digital currencies pretty well already. And we all seem to be pretty happy paying Visa and MasterCard 2 to 3% for every transaction that's out there. And so those digital currencies, in a sense, already exist, but they're based on fiat. They're referenced to fiat currencies, to the US dollar, to the Canadian dollar, to the euro, to the renminbi, to whatever, right? What we're doing at the World Gold Council is we think there's a strong need to, first off, ownership of gold really hasn't changed in I would say hundreds of years in terms of how you do it, but even trading it and buying it and acquiring it, 5-day settlement periods, extended collateral requirements and such like that. It's time for gold to step up. The technology exists, and so we at the World Gold Council kicked off the Gold 247 initiative, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Is where 247 represents. We've been at it now for about a year and a half. We've got a gold bar integrity program going where a bunch of our members are now recording their production into a blockchain database, and so we actually have a track record of provenance behind that, which is helpful in terms of gaining trust. But ultimately what it's going to feed into is a digitalized token that is backed by gold, guaranteed by the World Gold Council and our partners. And we are working with the LBMA on this. We are working with a number of other members on this to try and advance forward this case and trying to improve the way that you can own gold, make it accessible, make it trustworthy, make it fungible, make it fractionable, and so that you'll wind up with digital tokens that can easily be moved instantly, with instant settlement and with full confidence that you've actually got gold backing those tokens. We think that it'll revolutionize the way we can own gold. It's not going to replace. If people still want to own physical gold, then there's no doubt the confidence and the joy that comes from actually holding physical gold. We're not changing that. We're just adding to the different ways that you can bring gold into the space. And we think there's a huge market for a digital token, a digitalized token that is backstopped by gold and is freely and easily tradable around the world. And quite simply by passing over an Apple wallet or a Google Pay system, being able to transfer gold back and forth with confidence and knowing that there is gold backing it. And so we're in the process of putting this together. We're hoping to get some strong support. We're working with a lot of the central banks, the bullion banks, to try and see if there's a way that we can weave it into the institutional side. We think that that's probably necessary for it to get broader acceptance. Of course, the banks are kind of happy with the fees they're making right now in terms of trading gold, and so with the help of regulators, securities regulators and stuff, we're hoping to move everyone down this path and have something. I think it's going to be an exciting year. We should have something out before the end of this year.
Okay, really interesting. So I have to ask, so we've seen attempts to do digital gold before, and I think you've outlined a little bit about what makes this different. It does sound like this is happening at a much higher level than we've seen before, but what makes you think it's going to be successful? People are going to adopt this, and we're really going to get there this time.
Two reasons. All the other attempts that we've seen have been run by for-profit companies. And now, I will say that Visa and MasterCard are for-profit companies. They've done very well at getting us to go to digital currencies on their credit cards and stuff. But all the attempts to go with digital gold to date have been run by for-profit companies, and the fees are pretty exorbitant. It's never going to get full broad acceptance at those kind of costs. And the other side of it is that it's the World Gold Council backing it. It's the LBMA. We're putting together a broader group that represents the entire gold industry, and that's what's going to be backstopping this. And I just think that the fact that we're a non-profit and we're not doing it for profit is going to make a big difference in terms of acceptance and moving this forward.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. I think that's helpful. And just to clarify for everybody, so this is something the World Gold Council is doing, Gold 24/7 initiative. Central bank digital currencies is another total different thing that central banks are doing, and they don't seem to be looking at gold backing at all. Is that correct?
No, well, we have had discussions. There are some central banks out there that have considered that and talked about that. We've heard about China talking about that. They're all trying to find a way to compete with the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency, as a major reserve currency. And so but again, going back to the fact that I haven't actually used hard cash for such a long time, we may already be there in terms of digital currencies, and so there's no doubt there's an appetite for this. Again, I think it's trying to provide confidence to the population, to society about how we measure value. And unfortunately, if you don't have something solid backstopping that, and it's subject to political influence, it's almost doomed to fail. And it's just a matter of how long it takes to fail. And that's the challenge that we've always had for thousands of years in society is that it's the political influence side that makes it very, very challenging. And so we just need something solid backing it, like gold.
So looking just briefly at gold in 2023, we know that you have a positive outlook. That is not a secret. But what do you see specifically coming for gold in 2023?
I think we keep on building higher platforms, higher basements that we're building off of. And so in my feeling, 2022 was some of the strongest US dollars numbers that we've seen in terms of how it was trading relative to every other currency in the world. And 2023, I think it's the time that gold starts taking that mantle and starts stepping up. It is performed very well in the face of a very strong US dollar. I think the US dollar is probably too strong, and that bodes very well for gold.
And as we wrap up looking at Wheaton in 2023, we know that deals are in the pipeline. We know what production is looking like. Any final thoughts that you would share?
This is a good time to own more Wheaton. We've got a lot of growth. This is the first year of many years of good, strong growth. Over the next 5 years, we're going to see such a strong growth in our production profile. So, as I said, this is a good time to own more Wheaton.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming by to talk about what's going on at the company, what's happening with gold. Always great to speak with you.
Charlotte, thank you.
Of course. And once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Randy Smallwood with Wheaton Precious Metals.